Welcome to the Fieldnotes podcast, presented by Seaworthy Functional Medicine. Seaworthy exists to help you overcome your complex health challenges so you can be fully vital. Now, here's your host, Dr. Rob Downey.
What is betrayal syndrome, and how would we know if we have it or somebody we care about has it? And how can it affect our health? And how is it very specific? Today, we are so fortunate to be joined by Dr. Debi Silber. Dr. Debi, thank you for your time today.
Thank you. Looking forward to our conversation.
In getting ready for today, I was just really struck by how there's going to be some really interesting, important things for our audience just about what this is and how to recognize it. And as we get into it, this has, you'll start by telling us how you figured this out for yourself and then continued it on to do your work and your research. But this has really specific characteristics, right? So anybody in our audience who I thank for joining us who might assume, oh, this is just, I don't know, this is just kind of school of hard knock stuff, right? Everybody has stuff happen and then they kind of just spontaneously get better. I mean, one of the things we need to say right out of the gate is that's not how it works.
Not as it relates to betrayal. You know, betrayal is one of those things we've all been taught and told time heals all wounds. I have the proof that when it comes to betrayal, that's just not true. That's just not true, which is one of the features of post-betrayal syndrome. Happy to share anything and everything about what post-betrayal syndrome is, the other discoveries and all of that, if that would serve.
Yeah. Thank you. Well, yeah, let's jump into that. And two things off the top then. One is just some of the familiarization I did with your work is around like a specific person, right? Letting somebody else down through deceit or what have you. Are we also going to talk about, can this be a boss or a workplace or a circumstance? So if you'd incorporate that, that'd be good.
Sure. Well, you know, I define betrayal as the breaking of any spoken or unspoken rule, and every relationship has them.
Okay.
So the way it works is the more we trust, the more we depend on someone, the deeper the betrayal. So let's take a child, right? Who's totally dependent on their parent. The parent does something awful. That's going to have a different level of impact and cleanup than, let's say, your best friend sharing your secret, your coworker taking credit for your idea. Still betrayals, different level of cleanup left in the wake.
Okay. So this is very multifaceted.
Oh, absolutely.
Understood. Thanks. And then I don't want to get out ahead of it too much, but we'll also talk about National Forgiveness Day. So I very much want to make sure we get to that part and learn more about where that fits in. Okay, good. So what is this? How did you learn about it?
You don't think someone just says, oh, I think I want to study betrayal? No,
it seems like a tough and important topic.
Yeah, you study because you have to. I've been in business 34 years, health, mindset, personal development. I had a really painful betrayal from my family, and I thought I did what I needed to do to heal from that. And then it happened a few years later. This time it was my husband. That was the deal breaker. Got him out of the house, looked at the two experiences thinking, what's similar to these two besides me? And I realized I really never had boundaries in place. And I'm one of those people that believes if nothing changes, nothing changes. And here I was, 4 kids, 6 dogs, a thriving business. And I enrolled in a PhD program. And I did that because I would go to books or courses to learn my way through something. And I couldn't find anything to help me with this. And this was so big that I needed to study it so big. So I went back for this PhD and it was time to do a study. So I studied betrayal, and it was really just to help me so I could be better for my kids, my clients. And that study led to 3 discoveries, which changed my health, my family, my work, my life.
Great. Well, I look forward to hearing what those are.
Yeah. So the first was, I've always been interested in sort of the upside of healing. So I was originally studying betrayal and post-traumatic growth. I look at post-traumatic growth as the benefit of the experience somehow. But the first discovery was, because that was the nature of how I went into it, but I realized betrayal is a different type of trauma. And, I asked all my study participants, if you've been through other types of traumas, does betrayal feel different for you? Unanimously, they said it's so different. And here's why. And I had been through death of a loved one. I'd been through disease. And I was like, betrayal's different. It's the shattering of the self, rejection, abandonment, belonging, confidence, worthiness, trust. Like when you lose someone you love, you grieve, you're sad, you mourn the loss. Life will never be the same, but you don't necessarily question the relationship. You don't question your ability to trust. You don't question your sanity. With betrayal, you do. So that betrayal is a different type of trauma that needs a different way to heal. That was the first discovery.
So important. Wow.
Because of the shattering
and
of
intimidating, right? It's sort of some, couple of really inspiring folks I've talked to. It brings to mind this issue of Austin Perlmutter saying, how do you fix the computer if you are the computer? And then Michael Roseline saying, you're not broken, but you feel broken.
Yeah. You're
so
not broken.
bent, not broken. Oh. Okay, so that's one dimension of three. What are the other two characteristics?
Yeah. So the second discovery was that there's this collection of symptoms, physical, mental, and emotional, so common to betrayal. It's now known as post-betrayal syndrome. We've had over 100,000 people take our post-betrayal syndrome quiz to see to what extent they're struggling. And as I mentioned before, we've heard time heals all wounds, and that's not true. There's a question on the quiz that says, is there anything else you'd like to share? And people say things like, my betrayal happened 35 years ago. I'll never trust again. My betrayal happened 40 years ago. I can feel the heat. My betrayal happened 15 years ago. Feels like it happened yesterday. So we know we can't count on time or even a new relationship to heal it. And I'm happy to share the symptoms if that would serve.
Yeah, please do. And also for folks to know that it looks like there's access on the website as well for people, for your website, which we'll get to at the end. Just, I think this is really important, and also important for people to know if you're busy or you're listening to this podcast on audio while you exercise, or, in your car or something, you can also access Dr. Debi's resources. So please share.
Imagine over 100,000 people, men, women, just about every country's represented. As much as you're going to hear these symptoms, hear these numbers, ready? 78% constantly revisit their experience. 81% feel a loss of personal power. But just think of when you lose your personal power, what types of decisions are you making, right? 94% deal with painful triggers. 80% are hypervigilant. So think of what's going on with your nervous system right there. These are the most common physical symptoms. 71% have low energy. 68% have sleep issues. 63% have extreme fatigue. You sleep all night, you're exhausted. Those are your adrenals right there. 47% have weight changes. So in the beginning, you can't hold food down. Later on, you may be emotionally eating. Very common, using food for comfort. 45% have a digestive issue. And that could be anything: Crohn's, IBS, diverticulitis, constipation, diarrhea. The most common mental symptoms: 78% are overwhelmed. 70% are walking around in a state of disbelief. 62% can't concentrate. So just imagine that. You can't concentrate. You're exhausted. You have a gut issue. You still have to go to work. You still have to raise your kids, take care of your elderly parents, whatever you have going on. That's not even emotionally. Emotionally, 88% experience extreme sadness. 83% are very angry. And you're bouncing back and forth between those two emotions all day long, which is exhausting. I'll just read a few more. 79% are stressed. This one killed me. 84% have an inability to trust. Think about how that would impact your relationships, your work, right? 67% prevent themselves from forming deep relationships because they're afraid of being hurt again. They put the big wall up, right? Keeping everyone at a distance. 82% find it hard to move forward. 90% want to move forward, but they don't know how. What's even crazier about those numbers is they're not necessarily representative of a recent betrayal. This could be from the parent who did something awful when you were a kid. This could be from the partner who broke your heart in high school. So think about that. That person may not know care, remember. They may not even be alive. And here we are decades later with these symptoms because it was left unhealed. The good news is you could heal from all of it. And that was the third discovery.
Mm, mm. Well, I think the list is so helpful because in toto, it's so visceral hearing that.
Mhm.
That both sounds miserable, but it also sounds incredibly limiting in terms of people fulfilling their potential to be healthy and at ease.
Yeah.
And then for a functional medicine MD, that's just brutal on immunity, digestion,
Exactly.
stress resilience, et cetera. Just going to really hammer all the hardware and software that needs to be running to be healthy. So
Yes. And
yeah.
just to give you a story of what this looks like, we had one member within the PBT Institute who comes to mind, mid 80s. She had a 70+ year digestive issue from a family betrayal. She was adopted. They didn't tell her. It was like one of those things. 70+ years, had a digestive issue. 2 weeks into the program, healed from a 70+ year digestive issue. That's what happens when you deal with the root cause. Right?
Beautiful.
Versus
Beautiful.
just, suppressing the symptoms,
Mhm.
which is what we do. Because think about it, 70 years, she had no idea it had anything to do with that. You just assume, oh, this is me. This is how I'm
Yeah.
wired. This is
Yeah.
just what I have to deal with and cope with. But meanwhile, when you deal with the root cause, there's no reason for it to be there.
And Dr. Debbie, you characterized the ability to heal as a discovery. Was this a discovery during the study? Is this something you developed? And then how did that part emerge that people did you take existing toolkits and modify them for betrayal? How'd that part play out?
This all emerged during the study.
Mm.
Because the study was a deep dive into the lived experience
Mm-hmm.
of someone betrayed before, what was their life before, during, and after.
Mm.
So, and I purposely wanted to do it that way. Well,
Mm-hmm.
the way it works when you're doing research is you have to find the holes, what hasn't been researched.
Mm-hmm.
So there was a lot on betrayal, there was a lot on post-traumatic growth, but there was nothing on the deep lived experience. And I was really after those physical, mental, emotional symptoms,
Mm-hmm.
just so we know what we're working with and then to see what we can do with it. But when the third discovery emerged, that to me, in just the geekiest way, I thought my head was going to fly right off.
Great. All right, let's segue into that.
All right. So the third discovery was, and like I said, for me, this was the most exciting. And what we learned was, while we can stay stuck for years, decades, a lifetime, like that woman I mentioned, if we're going to fully heal, and by fully heal, I mean those symptoms of post-betrayal syndrome that I just shared, to this completely rebuilt place where you rebuild your life and yourself, called post-betrayal transformation, we will move through 5 proven predictable stages. And what's even more exciting about that is we now know what happens physically, mentally, and emotionally at every stage. And we know what we need to do in order to move from one stage to the next. Healing's entirely predictable.
Mm.
Happy to share the stages.
Yeah, great.
Because it would have been an awkward moment if you said no.
I'm all in.
Okay, great. So this is all we do within the PBT Institute. It's what I certify our coaches and practitioners in. Here's a boiled down version. So stage 1, this is actually before it happens. And if you can imagine 4 legs of a table, the 4 legs being physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual, what I saw with everybody, me too, was a heavy lean on the physical and the mental thinking and doing, and neglecting or ignoring the emotional and the spiritual feeling and being. Well, if a table only has 2 legs, it's going to be easy for that table to topple over. That's us. Stage 2, shock, trauma, D-Day, discovery day. This is by far the scariest of all of the stages. I remember one of the participants saying, you know what it felt like? It felt like every negative emotion you can imagine, getting punched in the gut and losing a child in a crowd all at the same time.
Mm.
Everyone remembers their D-Day.
Mm-hmm.
And this is the breakdown of the body, the mind, and the worldview. So right here, we've ignited the stress response. We're now headed for every single stress-related symptom, illness, condition, and disease. The mind is in a complete state of chaos and overwhelm. We cannot wrap our mind around what the information we just learned. This makes no sense. And our worldview has just been shattered. That's our mental model. You can trust this person. This is safe. Don't go there. These are the rules. And in one earth-shattering moment or series of moments, everything you've believed in, everything you've been following, everything you've been holding as true is no longer. The bottom has bottomed out on us, and a new bottom hasn't been formed yet. It's terrifying, right? But think about it. If the bottom were to bottom out on you, what would you do? You'd grab hold of anything or anyone in order to stay safe and stay alive. And that's stage 3, survival instincts emerge. This is the most practical out of all of the stages. If you can't help me, get out of my way. How do I survive this experience? Where do I go? Who can I trust? Here's the trap, though. This is the stage, by far, hands down, where most people get stuck. This is where your clients and patients come into. Once we've figured out how to survive our experience, because it feels so much better than the shock and trauma we just came from, we think it's good. And because we don't know there's anywhere else to go, we don't know there's a stage 4 or stage 5, our transformation doesn't even begin until stage 4. But because we don't know there's anywhere else to go, we plant roots here, we park here. We're not supposed to, but we don't know that. And 4 things start to happen. The first thing is we start getting all that secondary gain, those small self benefits. We get to be right. We like being right. We get our story. We love our story. We get sympathy from everyone we share our story with. And on some level, we're so unhappy, we look at these things as good. So we plant deeper roots. And now, because we're here longer than we should be, the mind starts doing things like, maybe it's you. Maybe you're not that great. Maybe this, maybe that. Maybe you deserved it. So we plant deeper roots. And now, because these are the thoughts we're entertaining, this is the energy we start putting out. Like energy attracts like energy. So now we're looking for confirming evidence. And we start attracting relationships and circumstances and people to confirm this is where you belong. Here's where we join that lame support group. And we will actually sabotage our healing because we found our people. Here's where we'll go to therapy, well-meaning therapists, but if they're not highly skilled in betrayal, you'll feel heard and validated and understood, rooting your spot in stage 3. Here's where you may be healing, but you're afraid to outgrow your betrayer. So you sabotage your healing, right? It gets worse, but I'll get you out of here. Because it feels so bad, but we don't know there's anywhere else to go, right here, we start numbing, avoiding, distracting. We start using food, drugs, alcohol, work, TV, whatever. And just to allow us to get through the day, right? So we do it for a day, a week, a month. Now it's a habit, a year, 10 years, 20 years. And I can see someone 20 years later and say that emotional eating you're doing or that numbing in front of the TV. Do you think that has anything to do with your betrayal? They'd look at me like I had 2 heads. They'd say it happened 20 years ago. All they did was put themselves in stage 3. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Yeah.
And what they wind up doing is they're spending a lifetime now medicating and suppressing the symptoms, living a stage 3 life, having repeat betrayals because nothing's changed. And they're so upset with where they are in life, or best case scenario, they've settled. They're like, this is the best I can hope for. Let me just get through it.
Yeah.
And they never made it to that stage 4. Can I get you into stage 4?
Yeah.
Can't stand leaving anybody in stage 3. Okay. So if you're willingness is a big word right here. If you're willing to let go of the story, grieve, mourn the loss, bunch of things you need to do, you move to stage 4. Stage 4 is finding and adjusting to a new normal. So here's where you acknowledge, I can't undo what happened, but I control what I do with it. Right there in that decision, you're turning down the stress response. You're not healing just yet, but you're stopping the massive damage that was going on in stages 2 and stage 3. Stage 4 feels like if you've ever moved. If you've ever moved to a new house, office, condo, apartment, whatever, your stuff's not there. It's not quite cozy yet, but it's this sort of hopeful excitement, right? But think about it. If you were to move, you don't bring everything with you. You don't bring the things that don't represent the version of you're now ready to become. And it was so interesting because there's this one spot as people go from stage 3 to stage 4. If your friends weren't there for you, they're not coming along. That support group, you're done. The therapist who doesn't understand and you're just rehashing things over and over, you're done. The betrayer who's not changing, you're done. And people say to me all the time, Dr. Debi, is it me? Yes, it is. You're undergoing a transformation. And if they don't rise, they don't come along. Anyway, when we've settled into this space, we've made it cozy, we've made it kind of mentally home, we move into the fifth most beautiful stage. And this is healing, rebirth, and a new worldview. The body starts to heal. Self-love, self-care, eating well, exercise. We didn't have the bandwidth for that earlier. Now we do. The mind is healing. We're making all kinds of new rules and boundaries based on what we've just experienced. And we have a whole new worldview based on everything we see so clearly now. And the four legs of that table, in the beginning, it was all about the physical and the mental. By this point, we're solidly grounded because we're focused on the emotional and the spiritual too. Those are the 5 stages.
Beautiful. Yeah, and it just seems so brilliant in that it's got some really nuanced aspects that seem to be universal motifs in folks that are really serious about breaking this sort of thing down, giving people a compass and a map, and the balancing act I see in your work, what I hear about Gabor others, is acceptance, acceptance and agency. Like because again, these stuck points are these icky limbos people get stuck in. Part of how they'll stay stuck is if there's recrimination, right? So blaming the self, blaming the other. Again, better than being paralyzed and overwhelmed. It's understandable why people keep their apartment in stage 3. But there's some finesse moves, or it's sort of reminiscent maybe of flow states in athletics or martial arts. There's a very elegant way to move through these things, but you kind of have to have somebody at mastery level like you inform what the moves are. They're intuitive when you know them, but until you know them, they're not intuitive.
Exactly. And I will tell you, there were 3 groups in the study who did not heal. And there's something about knowing what they are. So if anybody listening is doing this, just know it's keeping your healing at bay. So the first group, this was the group, they had their story, they were sticking with it. They were deeply rooted, like you were talking about, in stage 3. The second group, they were numbing, avoiding, distracting. They ran to the doctor who put them on a mood stabilizer, anti-anxiety medication. They were numbing in some way. It may have made the day a bit easier to get through, not without a price. They didn't heal. And I assumed, as a researcher, you're not supposed to assume anything, but I was new at this, that the people who were the hardest hit would grow the least because they had the most to overcome. That had nothing to do with it. It was the willingness that really drove them forward. And the third group, this was the group where the betrayer had very little consequences. So whether it was out of financial fear, religious reasons, not wanting to break up a family, whatever, they did all they could to look the other way, turn the other cheek. I saw 2 things with this group. Number 1, a further deterioration of the relationship. And 2, this group by far was the most physically sick. Their broken heart just couldn't handle that. But people are so afraid of the crash and burn of the old. That's the only way you birth the new, whether it's a new you or new collective. And just to close the loop on my story, rebuilding is always a choice, whether you rebuild yourself and you move along. That's what I did with my family. It wasn't an option to rebuild with them. Or if the situation lends itself, if you're willing, if you want to, you rebuild something from the ground up new with the person who hurt you. And that's what I did with my husband. So not long ago, as 2 completely transformed people, we married each other again. New rings, new vows, new dress, and our 4 kids as our bridal party. Betrayal will show you who someone truly is. It also has the opportunity to wake them up to who they temporarily became. Not that you need to do anything with it. There's tremendous potential, though, if you choose.
Are there, I'm always curious in my practice why people are or are not willing. Because one of the reasons I would say the character of my functional medicine practice is just the bias that if the work we do is real, then we can shine the light on where the root causes are. So that's transformative for a lot of folks. And there are folks that, admittedly, it's just a fit issue. The way I try to shine the light, it's not a fit for them, which is fine. Can't be everything to everyone. But there are folks I feel like I've turned the light on humanely together. And the stuck point seems to be willingness.
It is.
And is there a way you open the door for people to see that? The closest I've come to it is I've found the healing I've experienced. I mean, there's certainly dimensions of this that impact my story. So I came into this with my ears really perked up today, right? Just for myself. I mean, this is such a prevalent phenomenon. It also tells us how critically important your work is. But I found I just tend to be really motivated by showing up for others. And I
Mhm.
mean, that can be a little unhealthy, right? It can be codependent, but it's definitely my jam. I really feel well and I'm motivated to be healthy if I can show up for people. And I find then that that makes it easier to show up for myself, kind of a universal, like a democracy of compassion, right? If somebody gets compassion, everybody gets it, including me. But
Right.
share if you would, how do people open up the doors of willingness if that's their stuck point?
And I so appreciate what you're saying. I mean, that was exactly why I started our certification program. I said, well, if it gives me such joy to see someone moving through the stages, how do I leverage that? Well, the more
Hmm.
people we certify, of course, the more those 5 stages are in other hands. So I am on the same page with you. It's one of those things. It's typically there's such tremendous fear out of making that change because it's
Hmm.
going to shake up everything around them. If
Hmm.
and I have met with people who have said to me, Dr. Debi, how can you rework my mind so I don't mind my partner's betrayals? Like the partner was going to have there's no intention of changing. They wanted me to do some manipulation of their mind so that they'd be okay with it. That's not my
Hmm.
that's not my work. I
Hmm.
you know
Hmm.
so and then there are other people who are so terrified of change because they are afraid to outgrow their betrayer. They are afraid about who they become.
Hmm.
So they stay with the familiar known instead of embracing that journey of the unfamiliar. But I try to educate when that's the case because I let them know what was something you were a little bit afraid of in the past, and the
Hmm.
fear, it was unfamiliar, and then you did that thing and it became familiar, and now you love it, right? Like think about jumping into a pool. You hesitated, you went back and forth, you wavered, and finally you did, and then your parent couldn't take you home right from the pool because
Right.
right, you loved it. Same thing. If people knew what stages 4 and 5 felt like for a minute, they wouldn't waste their time in stage 3. And I give a lot of analogies too. Like one that I often share is imagine 2 best friends. They're both 30 pounds overweight. They put themselves together. They look good. It doesn't really stop them from doing things in life, right?
Hmm.
But one of them says one day, I'm kind of done with the 30 pounds. I'm going to embark on this health journey. I'm going to lose the weight. I'm going to eat well. I'm going to exercise and this and that. And she does. And then she says to the other friend, it's so great over here. Let me help
Hmm.
you. Let's do
Hmm.
this. And the
Hmm.
other one says, no, 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 I'm okay. And the truth is, she is, but she has
Hmm.
no idea what this feels like. So
Hmm.
if the person who loses the weight can shed light on what's waiting for her
Hmm.
friend, if she's willing to be a little uncomfortable,
Hmm. Hmm.
sometimes that helps.
Just the so helpful, I think, and I think that people getting a chance to reflect then on fear. Um, I think everyone can relate to that. It's a
Mhm.
universal experience. And I think everybody can relate to one or more fears that they dealt with. So I think it makes it very relatable what the path to success can be. And also being able to anticipate then, okay, this is what it's going to feel like to get to stages 4 and 5. I'm going to be dealing with fear.
Right.
So,
And it
yeah.
will be unfamiliar, just like anything else. And here's the thing, anybody who's been through betrayal, they've been through the worst of it already.
Hmm.
They owe it to themselves. Now there's a
Hmm.
roadmap, right? They owe it to themselves to enjoy the experience of what it
Hmm.
feels like to intentionally and deliberately rebuild yourself. That's the
Hmm.
beauty of betrayal. Now
Hmm.
I know I just lost everybody when I said that beauty of betrayal. What I mean is everything has crashed and burned. And you have
Hmm.
an opportunity to take all the parts you love and leave behind everything that no longer serves. And when you do
Hmm.
that, that's trauma well serves.
Mm. Yeah, I like the phrase there, the blessing of adversity, because it both acknowledges that that adversity is painful and can feel horribly unfair and really a lot of grief around lost potential, lost time, etc. But at the end of the day, the thing we can do if we're willing is move into stages 4 and 5. Um, I know I'm hopping around a little bit. I don't want to forget to ask you about National Forgiveness Day and
Uh,
forgiveness. Where does that fit into this?
Well, it was one of those things where I am a highly sensitive empath with integrity as my highest value. To
Mm.
betray someone like me is just not a good idea.
Oh my.
It wasn't even enough and I even remember going through the study saying, I have no idea how I'm going to heal from this, but if I do, I'm taking everybody with me. It was
Yeah.
just a knowing. I mean, that was just
Yeah.
it.
Hmm.
And there's something about, here I've healed from physical illness, and I've healed from disease and losses of loved ones. Nothing was as hard for me as forgiving my husband,
Mm.
because it wasn't accepting. It was forgiving and rebuilding something entirely new. You
Mm.
take on every aspect of your ego. I mean, all of it. And it was so hard. And of course, forgiveness is just about us. It has nothing to do with the other person. Rebuilding has everything to do with the other person. Forgiveness is all about us. It doesn't mean you're weak, doesn't mean you're a sucker, it doesn't mean you're setting yourself up for it to happen again. It means you value yourself enough to let go of all that power that pain
Mm.
has over you. So it was that hard for me that it deserved a national holiday.
That's awesome. That is absolutely awesome. Yeah. So, what are the mechanics of that? What are those steps? What could people, presuming they're interested either as a coach and getting these skills to help people, or doing one of your programs to have a transformative personal journey. But this dimension of forgiveness, I'm sure a lot of people are going to be intrigued by this. What's
Mhm.
the character of that
Yeah.
step?
It's interesting because just as the 5 stages, you don't skip a stage, the order doesn't change, you don't leave things out. Forgiveness has a very important place, because if you do it too early, it backfires every time. We're just not ready for it. We're just
Hmm.
not.
Hmm.
So there's an important place for it. And then when you're ready, it accelerates everything. But
Hmm.
forgiveness, I know, is a charged word for a lot of people, like for
Hmm.
religious reasons or whatever. I remember
Hmm.
reading a study when I was doing my study, and it said, if you feel safe and valued and you forgive, you feel better. If you
Hmm.
do not feel safe and valued and you forgive, you feel worse. And I said, well, what would that look like if we upped it a notch and changed the word forgive to reconcile? And it would sound like this: if I feel safe and valued and I reconcile, I can feel better. If I do not feel safe and valued and I reconcile, I feel worse.
Hmm.
So forgiveness truly is about us. But when you take that on, it's transformative. My intention for a National Forgiveness Day, and we've done it 2 years in a row, it was an experiment. It was to see, since it takes, they say, 3 weeks to make a habit. So it was a 21-day live experience. I'd go live for 21 days with the most profound stories of forgiveness I've ever heard, experiential activities, mantras, meditations, the whole thing. And the idea was, could you go from angry, bitter, and resentful to forgiving and feeling more free in
Hmm.
21 days? And
Hmm.
it was incredible how we had this tracking system, and now it's available as a program, nationalforgivenessday.com. And it was a tracker, and it went from, I'm not even willing to think about this, to, I'm kind of letting it go, to, wow, whatever the tracking
Hmm.
system was. And within a
Hmm.
week, we had people making phone calls to a sibling who stole their whatever, and they were letting it go. It was beautiful,
Hmm.
beautiful. And
Hmm.
and it was just something that it was so great to see, because withholding forgiveness, the physical damage we do just in doing
Hmm.
that, right? I
Hmm.
mean, it's like that saying, drinking poison and hoping the other person dies. That's
Hmm.
really what we're doing when we're
Hmm.
hanging on. But when it relates to betrayal, so many things have been taken from us. Holding on to, if we forgive or not, sometimes feels like the only thing we have control over. So there are
Yeah.
definitely reasons why we do that, but it's not in our best interest.
Hmm. Hmm. So good. Wow, this is so good. It just really fits. It's really helpful to get to do the podcast because I work in a geographically remote setting. So I get to talk with, the smartest, fiercest, most luminous people in the world, which is just amazing. I get to be with my tribe. And then it makes me a better doctor and a better human to get to learn from like a person who fits your archetype, like a radiant warrior.
Mm.
And then I think it gives people a lot of hope, and specifically it gives them tools because uh, I'm very empathic too. And I had somebody say sort of what happens when I'm present with people is it opens up a space where they realize they can heal.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of us who are empathic and deal with that vulnerability, right? That extra dimension of many of us who've been hurt, there's an extra dimension to our vulnerability
Yeah.
because we got a sort of unique capacity to connect to others, but probably a bigger uh, opening for things to hit us. Anyhow, I'm just really blown away. I'm just really happy for our audience. I've mentioned it a lot. Maybe this season of the podcast, this is the theme because this goes all the way back to Kaiser Permanente and adverse childhood events and
Mhm.
autoimmunity and weight and depression and et cetera. Bessel van der Kolk, the body keeps the score. This is in our body, it's in our cells, it's in our hardware, and it's our software, it's in our DNA.
Mhm.
And as Westerners, just many of us don't sort of have the mental constructs to realize that it's in there.
Yeah.
But most importantly, there are paths, like you say, the compassionate psychotherapist who doesn't have the training to get them out of stage three.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot of well-intentioned people folks can attend to who aren't going to get them to the other side of this. And so I really only want to have folks on the podcast who do what you do and say, this is what the whole journey looks like. This is what it's like to get to a state of radiant, abundant well-being that's sustainable, where you transform your suffering. So, wow.
Well, thank you for the opportunity. It's people like you that give people like me a voice. So grateful.
Are the things that important? Um, I love it that people can go, find you. We'll talk about where. So, are there things that would be helpful to share you didn't get a chance to, or things that people would love to know about? What have you learned what have been the surprises? So, you had a bunch of these aha moments
Mm-hmm.
as you transitioned into this work. What are the extra dimensions you've learned by now?
I love that question. One thing that comes to mind is we have a program for the betrayers as well. And at first I thought, because people ask me, oh, do you have anything for the betrayers? And to me, when I hear something 3 times, it's time to create something. And so I did. And at first I thought, oh, it's going to be triggering because do I really want to meet with the
Hmm.
betrayers? Do I
Hmm.
need to be in the lion's den like that? And of course, they have a separate community and it's a separate program, separate curriculum. It's one of the most rewarding programs we have
Mm.
because I see every day how these people, they've blown up their lives, they've shattered the heart and trust of the person they love the most, who loves them the most. And they are so ready to become someone they're proud of.
Mm.
And it's beautiful. It's
Hmm.
beautiful to see them evolve, just as it's so rewarding to see people in stages 4 and 5 create new businesses, new levels of health, new relationships, new passion projects, as it is certifying coaches, and they blow up their businesses using our model. So it's beautiful to
Mm.
be in this space to watch all of that happen.
Mm. That seems like incredible largesse of spirit and a deep wellspring of humanity to be able to show up for both sides. I think there might have been a little fear there
Oh
too,
yeah, not
right?
gonna lie. There
Um,
was.
a couple I have just a ton of respect for. They described work they did. Uh, it's easy for me as an empath to show up for the betrayed, harder for the betrayers.
Mhm.
But I mean, I'm really struck by the Hippocratic Oath. I went and read it the other day and it seemed kind of old-timey. I mean, it
Uh-huh.
wasn't as cool as I thought it was,
Yeah.
but but it was just a commitment to show up for everyone.
That's it.
And this couple that talked about work they'd done in Vietnam for many, many years, working with betrayers,
Mm.
that just what they described was they were Buddhists working in a Buddhist country. So they were just talking about the compassion of hearing the stories of the betrayers. And the betrayers, I mean, typically had pretty dramatic trauma history, to say the least.
Yeah.
And certainly were not who they wanted to be, who and how they wanted to be in the world. And I never want any of this to be saccharine or Pollyannish, right? But I mean, it just makes so much sense that kind of, oh, ideally, we've got to show up for everybody. If we want these practices we're describing to make the best of everyone and of society, which is another good thing that can happen,
Right.
we kind of can't leave one group behind out of I don't know, a stigma or because it's inconvenient.
Yeah, I agree. And they know it's not about giving them a pass or being easy on them.
Mm-hmm.
It's a lot of tough love. I don't excuse any of it. Where, I remember
Yeah.
there was one, and it's men and women. And this one, this time it was a husband, and he betrayed his wife, and he said, "I can't believe she's breaking up a family." Oh, no, no, no. Stop right there. Your actions broke up the family.
Yeah.
So they know that they're not getting away with any of it, but I will help
Yeah.
them as
Yeah.
much as I can. I give them the playbook. This is what you say. This is what you never say.
Uh-huh. Yeah. Well, based on the rigorousness with which you've characterized all of this, and given that, this all comes out of doctorate level work, I think folks can presume if they take these steps that it's going to be meaningful, it's going to be clear-eyed, and it's going to be real.
Yeah.
There's some grit.
Yeah, for sure. And there's a saying I've been saying my 34 years of business, it applies to. I can't find a topic it doesn't apply to. And it's hard now, easy later. Easy now, hard later. Take your pick. It's going to be one of those two. When it comes to healing from betrayal, hard now. It is easy later. You're going to create a version of you that's going to blow your mind.
Wow, Dr. Debi, great conversation. Made my day. You're going to make a big difference in a lot of people's lives for your time today. So thank you. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Have a great rest of your day.
You too.
Hey, everybody, it's Dr. Rob. You can find Dr. Emily at the pbtinstitute.com. P as in Papa, B as in Bravo, T as in Tomcat, institute.com.
Thanks for joining us for the Seaworthy podcast. Seaworthy exists to help people overcome their health challenges and be fully vital. If you think we've earned it, please consider giving this podcast a like, subscribing, and giving us a 5-star rating on the platform of your choice. Thanks.